Do you have an Avata 2 like this? If you do you have one of these? The reason I ask, this is a game changer. I say this with all love and respect, but if you're flying with the motion controller, you need an upgrade, and here's why. So I have 3 reasons why this DJI FPV controller is what you need to be flying with if you own the DJI Avata 2. Very simple, 3 reasons. Reason number 1, the amount of control that you get with this. It did take me a little while before I could get my hands on this version. Long story short, I ordered one, Amazon canceled it, waited a while, and then I finally got my hands on one. And I wish I'd done it so much sooner, because when you're flying with that motion controller, it's fun, it's easy, it's cool, the easy acro, all that stuff. But the fine controls are very lacking. And even though you're following that little circle on your display, it is still not as accurate as you would want it. And these little joysticks with the fine little controls that you can get, so much more worth it. So when you're following that little circle with the motion control, whichever one that is, the newest one, well, any of them really, you point it in a direction and you just hope that very hard to explain. You need to have used it to know, but the fine little motor skills, just because basically it's the control of this thing is all these little tiny movements with your wrist. If you're going slow and low, which I've done in my backyard a lot, yes, you can do gaps. You never really feel like you can just let loose and rip and be in full control of it. Whether you're in sports mode or manual mode or normal mode, these little joysticks and tiny little movements and you just feel so much more confident. The amount of little tiny gaps I was doing with the motion controller compared to the FPV controller, very, very different. There's some I just wouldn't attempt. Like, you basically give yourself a little bigger room to work with when you're working with that little control, with the motion controller. Whereas with this, you can really hone in. If you think, if the drone can fit through, I can do it. And a lot more confidence. So reason number 1, the fine controls of this. So number 2 is the manual mode and the whole learning curve that you get with learning manual mode. So I did start on the simulators, which everyone talks about, and I've got 2 of them. I can't remember, Crushed and the racing one, the one that actually the official company who does the drone racing, that one. And definitely a good starter. I actually tried with an Xbox controller first, just to try and get, and just don't do it, don't do it. Get yourself a controller, any of the FPV controllers, and plug it in and practice that way. So much different with just the difference in height in this little deal makes a big difference. So don't do that. There's a little pro tip. But spend some time in the simulators, and I didn't do like all the tutorials, I didn't do all the extra stuff, but I got familiar with FPV. The other one was liftoff, so that was a 2. I don't know what Past Me was talking about because it wasn't crashed or whatever. On this one, there's a DLC, which is called Slipstream, where you can have moving vehicles. There's one where it's a racetrack, so there's 3 cars racing around, so you can practice like as if you're chasing cars. Very, very cool. So this one's called Sulphur, and it's basically Iceland, or an Iceland type place where you got big trucks moving around, you've got a little volcano in the middle, and you got some mountains that you can practice diving on. The only thing I wish you could do with these simulators is wear goggles. That would just be so much more engaging. So DJI is listening. Do some patch to allow you to use the goggles on a simulator like this. That'd be so fun. Cut the motors and point your drone down. Definitely gives you a lot more confidence when you know there's no consequences if you dink in your drone. Just spoke too soon. There you go, spawned right back in the middle of the map. These are kind of fun just to mess around with. The tutorials are really good. Definitely get you used to the hang of the sticks. There we go, we'll cut back to the rest of the video. So the first time I actually got the controller and flew FPV and flew manual, so the little rocker on the back, push it to the back, go into the settings, do the little checkbox and whatever that you have to do to get it into full manual and full acro mode. Flying, I sent it to the mountain right near where I live. I can see it from my backyard, and just did a couple of flips, a couple of rolls, just flew it, and it is a very different experience. And yes, I've crashed. Yes, I've had little dinks and little bumps. My Avata is still intact, it still flies. It's gonna happen. One of them I thought I actually almost done it for good, but it's just so much fun. It's fun to get. Now, the cool thing with the controller and the cool thing with the Avata and the DJI system is if you're in trouble, you can either flick it over from manual into sport and the drone finds a hover and stays there, or you can press the pause button. As I'm flying, the pause button just is a little bit more of a reach here than actually just moving the little rocker right there. So I find myself throwing it into sports real quick instead of trying to tap that one and fumbling around. That is a real lifesaver actually. And there's like a clip here. At last minute threw it into sports and it saved it, and it was a couple of feet from the ground. So you've got the fine motor controls as my first point, manual mode as my second point, as to why this is just so much fun. And then the third mode is one complaint I had with flying with the motion controller with the Avata 1, the Avata 2, and really the new one, the Neo, is you can't fully dive the drone. Whenever you're hovering like this and you try to go down, so the drone just points its gimbal down and drops. And if you're like going down a mountain, it does the same thing and just kind of, and it makes when you do it real aggressively, the drone starts to shake as it's dropping altitude because it's trying to control its drop and not just cut the motors and free fall. And that's something you just can't do any other way unless you have the controller. So when you're dropping your throttle and you're dropping it and cutting the motors and you're above a mountain and you're just letting it free fall, I'm learning. It's something I really, really wanted to do for the longest time with all the Avatas that I've flown, and I've never have until I got this. But it is definitely a confidence, there we go, that's the best word to use, a confidence thing. When you're cutting your motors and you're approaching the ground real quick, it's finding the right balance of catching the drone. And I feel like I gradually increase the throttle, which means instead of like dive and then you catch yourself at the bottom and you kind of follow the ground, I find I'm diving and then just kind of slowly leveling off, which then, and I'm nowhere near the ground, right? So it's finding that confidence in where I can cut the motors, drop as low as I can, and knowing when I can either catch it with going full throttle or increasing the throttle. You know, you see drones going down waterfalls and down mountains, and I think they call it like mountain surfing or something along the lines. There's a special term for it. And the footage you get from them different places is just so good, beautiful. And I'm lucky that I got mountains right close to my house. So I've done a couple of little walks, hikes, bike rides where I've got a little bit deeper and higher and where I can get closer to the mountains without potentially losing signal. As soon as most of these drones go behind a solid piece of rock like a mountain, you're getting choppy footage and then it cuts. And that's kind of a scary moment when you like did the technology work and then 5 seconds, 10 seconds goes by and your footage comes back in and you can see it returning to home. You're like, okay, DJI did the thing and made it sure that you don't just lose your drone. This controller with all them three things I just mentioned allows you to get all this cool footage that you see on all of the, you know, the little cine whoops and the little 5-inch drones flying around and going into all these little crevices and whatever. So much more precision and accuracy and confidence flying with this thing. So let's wrap this all up. If you have an Avata 2, you should get this. If you don't have an Avata 2 and you're going to get an Avata 2, you need to factor the price of this into your decision, because the motion controller, I think it's on 3. The motion controller 3, it's great for beginners. It's great just to get into it and get used to the whole thing. But that should not, I'm being pretty bold here, that should not be your goal, is just to fly the Avata with the motion controller. It's got its place, especially for kids, learners, but just don't stay there for too long. Invest into one of these, invest in the time into learning it. I'm still learning it, but you can very easily put a couple of hours into, and obviously I'm caveating here, so the experts, the people who fly FPV and the people who teach how to fly it will say put lots and lots and lots of hours into the simulators. But I didn't do a lot. I did some tutorials, some free flying and just getting used to it, and then put it into the real world and learned on the job, let's say. And it's fun. It's fun. It's fun just to cruise around and to do it and to play around with it and just to quickly go from manual to sports to normal, just depending on what you're doing. If I'm flying low and slow, and I'm not worrying that I'm gonna put a wrong input in and flip the drone over, whatever, I just put it into sport or normal and just let the GPS do its thing and allow that to keep me upright and stable. I probably do, I mean, I just really don't want to flip it and break something on it. So I probably do have the skill now, if I want to say that, to put it into manual and fly low and slow and even low and fast. But the sport mode, the normal mode, just gives you that bit of confidence that you know you're not going to roll it by accident. You can still clip the ground. I've done it. Actually, no, I was doing a flip and I didn't catch myself, and that one I landed upside down on the grass footage. This works on the DJI Neo, and that's coming. It's getting released pretty soon here in the US. Although the rest of the world's had it before we had. This, the motion controller, the RC2, RCN1, RCN2, sorry, all these other controllers you can use. So I might be getting the Neo soon. I might be flying FPV with that just to have some fun with it. Will I keep the drone? Maybe. I'm definitely going to try it out at some point. But I like the whole self-flying thing. You press a couple of buttons and it does that. So Neo's coming out soon. Christmas is coming soon. The Neo might be a gift from my family if I have my say. So each part of the family might get their own little drone to play with. So if anyone's watching this, disregard that. You don't need to hear it. So here's the thing. You need to get this, period. I don't care where you're at on the FPV journey. If you just like flying with the motion controller, you gotta invest the time and energy into doing it. It's just worth it. If I haven't convinced you at this point, some footage that I shot may not do it. If it's just a matter of time, of saving up and getting the money, just promise you, I wish I'd done it sooner. The cool factor and the things you can do with this is just worth the investment in time, worth the investment in the money. And it's like 200 bucks. So not crazy. I mean, 200 bucks for anything these days is up there, but it definitely unlocks a lot with the Avata 2. So that is my persuasion of the DJI controller. Links will be in the description below. Any questions, let me know. So FPV controller, if you don't have one, you should. And hope you have a great day. Bye.